Windows 11 has a couple of requirements that I find horrifically problematic.
You own your machine. That's not up for debate. But Microsoft is rewriting that agreement without asking permission, and the consequences are exploding in ways even Bill Gates didn't see coming. Windows 11 was supposed to usher in the AI revolution. Instead, it triggered a consumer rebellion so severe that Microsoft's closest hardware partner just publicly threw the entire strategy under the bus. Bill Gates is watching his empire fracture in real time. The platform he created to put computing power in everyone's hands is now weaponizing that power against its own users.
Next thing people don't like was the overcramming of AI in there, where there's AI in the toolbar, every time you right-click, and everywhere your cursor goes, there's AI.
And at CES 2026, the facade finally cracked when Dell, Microsoft's most loyal ally, stood on the industry's biggest stage and admitted what everyone already knew: the AI PC experiment has catastrophically failed.
The AI is the biggest technical thing ever in my life.
This isn't speculation. This is Dell's product chief standing in front of the entire consumer electronics industry and stating plainly that customers aren't buying computers based on artificial intelligence, that AI marketing confuses people instead of helping them make decisions. When your biggest partner abandons your core narrative at your most important trade show, you've lost more than momentum. You've lost credibility. Microsoft bet everything on a vision nobody asked for. They created an entirely new product category called Copilot+ PCs, complete with strict hardware requirements that only the newest machines could meet. The barrier to entry? A neural processing unit capable of at least 40 trillion operations per second. That's not a recommendation. That's Microsoft's published specification. A hard line drawn to separate the future from everything that came before. But here's what they won't tell you. This wasn't about making Windows better. This was about obsoleting functional hardware to force upgrade cycles that benefit manufacturers and give Microsoft control over a new tier of devices where artificial intelligence runs perpetually in the background, monitoring everything you do, whether you want it or not. The pitch sounded transformative. AI-powered computers that learn your habits, anticipate your needs, and fundamentally change how you interact with technology. The reality? Intrusive features that break workflows, violate privacy, and solve problems nobody actually has. You didn't ask for an AI assistant that interrupts your work. You didn't request constant surveillance of your screen. You certainly didn't ask to pay premium prices for hardware requirements that make your computer slower and less reliable. And the centerpiece of this disaster? A feature so fundamentally broken that Microsoft had to delay it, redesign it, and ultimately hide it from the vast majority of users just to contain the damage. That feature is called Recall, and it represents everything wrong with Microsoft's current direction. Here's how Recall was supposed to work. Windows takes continuous screenshots of everything on your display, analyzes those images with artificial intelligence, and builds a searchable timeline of your entire digital life. Forgot what you were working on 3 weeks ago? Just ask your PC, and it retrieves the exact moment. Microsoft marketed this as photographic memory for your computer, a revolutionary workflow built around AI-powered search and memory. The backlash was instantaneous and universal. Security researchers, privacy advocates, IT administrators, and ordinary users all reached the same conclusion simultaneously. This is a catastrophic security vulnerability masquerading as a feature. Think about what Recall actually captures. Every private message you send, every password you type into a login form, every financial account detail visible in your browser, medical records displayed in telehealth appointments, sensitive business documents, personal conversations, confidential client information, all of it recorded, indexed, and stored in a database sitting on your hard drive, waiting to be exploited. Microsoft insisted this was safe because the data never leaves your device. Local storage supposedly equals local security. That argument collapses the instant you understand how real-world breaches happen. Malware doesn't need internet access when the treasure trove is already sitting on your system. Any malicious software that gains local file access can harvest your entire Recall timeline in seconds. One infection, one exploit, one moment of compromised security, and everything you've done on your computer becomes available to attackers. The attack vectors are terrifying in their simplicity. Physical access combined with a weak PIN, your entire digital history gets exposed. Corporate backup systems automatically archiving Recall databases, sensitive timelines leak into managed storage, accessible to IT departments and potentially beyond. Remote administration tools with endpoint access, automated data exfiltration becomes trivial. Remote code execution vulnerabilities. Attackers don't even need credentials. They just need to execute code. and Recall hands them a pre-indexed archive of your life. The danger isn't that hackers are geniuses. The danger is that Microsoft created a single perfect target. Instead of attackers needing to compromise dozens of different services to build a profile of you, Recall packages everything into one convenient location. Microsoft built the surveillance infrastructure themselves, and then told users to trust that nothing would go wrong. Security researchers needed less than a day to prove how catastrophically wrong it could go. They downloaded the preview build, located the folder where Recall stored its data, and discovered the database was completely unencrypted and accessible to any application running under your user account. Passwords, financial data, private communications, everything sitting in plain text, ready for any piece of malware to grab and transmit. Microsoft's response revealed just how badly they miscalculated. Recall was immediately delayed. The rollout shifted from broad public release to a limited Windows Insider preview. What was supposed to be the flagship feature justifying AI PC purchases became a reputational disaster that Microsoft had to walk back repeatedly. They added opt-in requirements. They rewrote the security architecture. They introduced more enterprise controls. They extended the preview indefinitely. When a feature requires that many reversals before it even officially launches, the market understands what's really happening. The product is fundamentally broken, and Microsoft didn't realize it until customers and security experts forced them to confront reality. But the Recall disaster is just one symptom of a much larger problem. Windows 11 adoption has completely stalled, and the numbers tell a story Microsoft desperately wants to hide. According to StatCounter data from November 2025, Windows 11 held roughly 53% market share, while Windows 10 maintained 42%. That's not the clean migration curve Microsoft needed. That's hesitation and resistance on a massive scale. Then December 2025 data arrived, and the situation got worse. Windows 11 dropped to approximately 50%. Windows 10 climbed to nearly 45%. People aren't just refusing to upgrade. They're actively moving backward, choosing an older operating system over the new one. Microsoft is trying to force on them. Microsoft tried every lever they had to force compliance. Windows 10's official end-of-support deadline hit on October 14, 2025. That date was supposed to be the final pressure point. Fear of lost security updates has always been Microsoft's strongest tool for moving users forward. It's worked for decades. This time it failed completely. Users weighed the options and decided that running an unsupported operating system was preferable to upgrading to Windows 11. When people willingly accept security risks rather than move to your new platform, you've lost control of the narrative entirely. Then Microsoft made it even worse. They offered one free year of extended security updates for Windows 10, but only if users enabled Windows Backup and synced their Documents folder to OneDrive. Otherwise, you pay for extended support or redeem reward points to access it. Even security became a bargaining chip to push cloud adoption and data collection. That's not customer service, that's extortion. The anger users feel isn't about one bad feature or one questionable decision. It's about the entire control infrastructure Microsoft has embedded into the operating system, layer by layer, until the computer you purchase no longer feels like it belongs to you. Start with the hardware gatekeeping. Windows 11 system requirements locked out millions of perfectly functional computers built between 2016 and 2019. These weren't outdated machines struggling to run basic tasks. They handled creative software, business applications, modern games, and demanding workloads without breaking a sweat. Microsoft labeled them obsolete, not because of performance limitations, but because of arbitrary policy decisions designed to force hardware replacement cycles. The goal was never about security or stability. It was about creating artificial scarcity that benefits hardware manufacturers and gives Microsoft leverage to enforce new platform requirements that serve their strategic interests, not yours. Then there's the account requirement. For decades, Windows allowed you to treat your computer as a standalone tool. You powered it on, logged in locally, and worked. No internet connection required. No corporate authentication needed. Your machine was yours. Windows 11 fundamentally changed that relationship. Setup now increasingly demands internet access and a Microsoft account. Your login credentials, system settings, backup configurations, and usage patterns all flow through Microsoft servers by default. The computer is no longer a self-contained device you control. It's a node in Microsoft's cloud ecosystem, and you're granted permission to use it as long as you stay connected and compliant. Once Microsoft secured that account layer, they turned Windows into a monetization platform. OneDrive prompts became relentless, pushing users to store files on Microsoft servers rather than locally on hardware they own. Windows Backup aggressively nudges you toward cloud storage. And to make it even more egregious, they tied free security updates to OneDrive sync requirements. If you want protection, you upload your documents. If you want control, you accept risk. Then came the advertisements. Inside an operating system you already paid for. Start menu promotions for Microsoft services. Subscription nags for Microsoft 365. File Explorer upsells for cloud storage. Copilot pop-ups that return after every update even when you've deliberately disabled them. You paid for your hardware. You indirectly paid for Windows through that purchase. And Microsoft thanks you by turning your desktop into an advertising platform. The business model is obvious. They make money if those ads convince you to subscribe to Office 365 or purchase additional cloud storage. It's not complicated, and users see right through it. But Microsoft refuses to acknowledge that people despise this approach. Performance degradation made the problem impossible to ignore. Windows 11 promised efficiency and speed. What it delivered was slower application launches, reduced gaming frame rates, and significantly heavier background resource consumption compared to Windows 10 running on identical hardware. Background syncing, telemetry collection, AI services, and cloud integration hooks consume system resources continuously. When an operating system makes expensive modern hardware perform worse than the previous version did, users stop believing the marketing promises and start searching for alternatives. And those alternatives have never been more accessible. Linux distributions now install cleanly and recognize hardware automatically. Compatibility layers like Proton allow thousands of Windows games to run on Linux without modification. The Steam Deck proved Linux gaming works at consumer scale. What was an insurmountable barrier a decade ago is now barely an inconvenience. macOS offers predictable performance, excellent battery efficiency, and a controlled ecosystem that many professionals find easier to manage than Windows 11's constant interruptions and changes. Creative professionals in particular have been migrating in significant numbers, seeking systems that stay out of their way and let them work. Chromebooks provide low-maintenance devices perfect for roles where simplicity and security matter more than legacy Windows software compatibility. Small businesses, schools, and even enterprise environments are discovering that many jobs don't actually require Windows at all. Once users cross that bridge and rebuild their workflows on different platforms, they rarely return. Windows loses more than a customer at that moment. It loses influence over future industry standards, it loses developer mindshare, and it loses the assumption that it's the inevitable default choice. Dell learned this reality the hard way. They spent an entire year watching AI-first marketing fail to drive consumer purchases. Customers walked into stores confused rather than excited. The messaging didn't resonate. The value proposition didn't land. Sales disappointed. So Dell made a dramatic strategic shift at CES 2026. Their devices still contain neural processing units and AI capabilities, but Dell stopped making artificial intelligence the headline. They refocused messaging on tangible benefits customers actually care about: battery life, build quality, display performance, and reliability. Then they brought back the XPS branding. After pushing AI-centric product names throughout 2025, they reversed course entirely and returned to a brand customers already knew and trusted. When a company resets its strategy that dramatically in public, they're admitting the previous approach failed. And when that company is Microsoft's largest hardware partner, the admission carries weight that reverberates across the entire industry. Enterprise customers saw through the AI PC narrative even faster than consumers. ET departments paused Windows 11 deployments. Organizations piloted macOS and Linux instead of rolling out the upgrade. Support overhead increased. Productivity measurably declined. Some companies tested the impact directly, documented the problems, and rolled back to Windows 10. Others stopped upgrading altogether and began evaluating long-term migration strategies to alternative platforms. Once a business absorbs the one-time cost of migrating away from Windows and discovers that ongoing support overhead is actually lower on alternative platforms, that decision becomes permanent. Windows doesn't just lose individual users in those scenarios, it loses entire organizations at once, along with all the future revenue and platform influence those organizations represented. Developer sentiment has turned openly hostile. Technology journalists who built entire careers covering Microsoft have switched platforms publicly and written extensively about why. Engineers and IT veterans who once recommended Windows by default now actively steer people toward alternatives in forums, communities, and professional networks. Developer sentiment surveys show goodwill replaced by frustration and distrust. This matters because developers determine where software gets built first and where innovation happens. When they disengage from a platform, the ecosystem begins to contract. Windows is losing its gravitational pull as the automatic target for new development. That's a slow-moving crisis, but it's also irreversible once it reaches a certain threshold. Bill Gates built Windows on a simple, powerful philosophy. Software should empower users and stay out of their way. Windows 11 represents the complete inversion of that founding vision. Empowerment has been replaced with control. Trust has been replaced with extraction. User experience has been subordinated to corporate strategy and monetization objectives. When the platform that defined personal computing for an entire generation alienates its own user base, this thoroughly. The anger isn't just about features or updates. It's about watching a decades-long social contract get shredded in just a few product cycles for the sake of short-term business metrics. So here's the question that matters. If even Dell, Microsoft's closest hardware ally, publicly admits the AI PC vision has failed, how much longer can Microsoft pretend Windows 11 represents the future? How many more users need to flee the ecosystem before the company acknowledges they've fundamentally misread what customers want? The empire Bill Gates built is slipping through Microsoft's fingers, one alienated user at a time. And the most damaging part? They're doing it to themselves. The revolt isn't being led by competitors. It's being driven by Microsoft's own decisions, their own disregard for user preferences, their own prioritization of control over service. Would you stay on a platform that surveils your activity, restricts your hardware choices, forces cloud integration, bombards you with ads, degrades performance, and then tells you it's all for your benefit? The answer, increasingly, is no. And that answer is reshaping the entire personal computing landscape in ways Microsoft can no longer control.